This is the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt.
It's a Rugby Ascendant Podcast on MEGAFOON Rugby, the home of your favorite rugby podcast. And it's my pleasure to welcome back Chris Wyatt. How's it, Chris?
Hey, it's going pretty good. How about yourself? We just had Thanksgiving here in America yesterday, and it was all things considered, despite the terrible weather. It was raining and kind of gloomy. It was a nice day, good Thanksgiving day. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to getting back to URC action starting this afternoon when I'm covering the Leinster game with Ulster.
It's clear to me how grateful you are, because you're obviously wearing your most prized position today. In honor.
Actually, yesterday I broke open a bottle of Nederburg, drank a bottle of wine on air, and so I lost all my clothes somehow, and I could only find this. So I think I'm fine.
No, pull the other one, Chris. We know you're a closet Bull supporter. I know you are. I've seen you at Loftus. Come on, let's be honest.
I'm just looking to become famous. That's all. No.
There you go. Well, that's the first step to it. Associate yourself with a winning brand, and there you go. All right, let's talk about rugby a bit. We're going to do a bit of a review, not a long one. Firstly, about the season and the URC story. But first, I want to talk to you about this stupid awards where everybody except the man that's supposed to get the award won something. What did you think of the awards, except for the Peter Stefter tour? I think that was quite deserved.
Well, I also think the Dream Team was pretty well deserved too. The picks were there were excellent, although we could easily have gotten 11 out of 15. But I think it was fair. The All Blacks deserved some players in there, and Kalen Dorse was in there. I think it was a good pick. One Argentine player. But as far as the as the coach of the year, this is just asinine. I don't understand why World Rugby has one coach when it gives awards out for two sports. It has 7s and 15s. They gave female player of the year, male player of the year, 7s and 15s. In fact, Antoine Dupont accomplished something this year that's never been accomplished before. He was the man of the year in 15s in 2021. This year, he's the man of the year or player of the year in 7s. That's incredible. But this nonsense of awarding it to a coach because he won 2 HSBC tournaments, which are really lame compared to what they were just a couple years ago. And they won the World Cup, or not World Cup, won the gold medal at the Olympics. That's impressive. But, they won because of Dupont. That's why they won, not because of the coaching. Let's be honest. I watched those games. Dupont saved their bacon, and Dupont won them the gold medal. It's as simple as that. I know it takes a team and one player. You can't say that, but we can say that with Dupont. He's just that good a player. I have a real issue with the fact that there aren't 2 awards, and World Rugby really set this up. This Northern Hemisphere Old Boys Club is just, they're just so tone deaf to the rest of the planet, and it's going to cost them dearly at some point. Because eventually we're going to have tens of thousands of people sitting in the seats in the United States watching rugby, and people are going to want to come from Ireland and from England and come from New Zealand to play here, not at the end of their career, but to get the career going. They're going to want to come here. That's going to happen. And the Old Boys Club, Northern Hemisphere, are going to find themselves out 10 or 15 years down the road. So I hope they grow up. But in the meantime, this was an incredible slight. And it's not just because we're Springbok fans. If you're objective, 11-2, the 2 losses were 1-point losses. One of those was a game in which it was an experimental squad, not the top flight players, let's be honest, in Argentina. And we still had the game won until Monty thought he was kicking into the stands and not at the post. That's and the other game was against Ireland. A stupid mistake by a young player, Fossey, allowed them to get the ball and get a chance to get themselves a drop goal. Both those games should have been won, and it should have been an undefeated season. They won the Freedom Cup, they won the Mandela Cup, they won the Rugby Championship. They won everything, and they briefly lost their world number 1 ranking, but regained it and leave as the most powerful team. And 50 players played. That's incredible. Plus debutantes. How do you become and remain the top team in the world when you're trying guys out like Morning Vandenberg played this year? It's scrum half. He played for them. It's just, it's unbelievable what Rossi's accomplished there. He's changed the game of rugby union, and they don't want to admit it, and they won't accept it. So, you know what? Rossi Erasmus, my coach of the year. World Rugby.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a bit of a debate on our channel about whether the coach of the year should be awarded to the guy who made a bad team much better, or the guy who made a very good team continue being very good. I know where my loyalties lie. What do you think of those? Which one of those 2 arguments carry the most weight for you?
Well, it's a tough one because we have this in all sports. And, I've seen coaches take a team that's terrible and not win, but get a winning record, and that's an incredible accomplishment and not get the award. I don't think it's fair. I think maybe there ought to be another award for that, not most improved, but we come up with a term for it, but I think there should be a different award for that. Because, if you're Eddie Jones, for instance, you come and you take over the England side that bombed out of the 2015 World Cup. You change virtually no players and go on an 18-game winning streak against the top nations in the world, including the All Blacks. I think that should have been coach of the year, easily for comeback coach of the year. Comeback team of the year, comeback team, maybe comeback team and coach award, a combined award. Yeah, comeback team and coach of the year because it happens and it's impressive. Look, a few years ago, was it in soccer? Was it Leicester? Never done anything for like 50 years, and they won. They won their league. Everyone's like, what's going on there?
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's talk about the Springbok, not just the last game, but the season as a whole. What you're thinking? Do you think they accomplished what they wanted to? Do you think they achieved their goals? Did they overshoot? Did they underperform? What was your impressions as a whole of the Springbok season?
Well, let's be clear. They underperformed for my expectations. I expect undefeated season. So let's go with that. Now, I think that Rossi and the team achieved every goal they sought out to do or to achieve. I mean, we were dropping locks like mosquitoes falling off with pesticide and still maintain. I mean, look, we put Peter Steph Dutoy at a lock. He became a world class lock.
Yeah, we put him back at lock because he started at lock. Remember?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, just out of the blue, it was just well, we put Chesley Colby as a hooker in for one,
and the scrum off,
and the scrum, and a wing, and I think he even slid the fullback in that game.
Yeah, it's going to scrum one of these days. I'm telling you.
Yeah, maybe we ought to have most versatile player of the year award too. But no, it's I think the Springboks achieved everything that Rossi set out to do. They bloodied players, got them experience. They traveled well. They played well. They did have an advantage in that they played the All Blacks games in South Africa, which was huge. I think that contributed to the season, and that confidence built on itself and really played a role. The Ireland loss was a wake-up call for the Springboks, who took, in my view, that game a little too lackadaisical. That's my assessment. I said at the time, I stick to it. They weren't hungry in that game, and they realized that after that cost them dearly, cost them that world ranking. They had to fight to get it back. It took a few months to get it back. But I think they achieved everything. The most important thing here is we see, and of course we see it because we watch the Curry Cup, we watch the URC games. Everybody in the world can see the depth of the Springboks. It's unbelievably deep. I mean, this is a number one team, a number one team, a number one team, and a number two team. You could just put them anywhere in the world, and they would be a top team. It's just amazing. There's no drop off. The biggest disappointment for this season for me was the injuries to players who we've seen. Luke de Jager, it was like he's the unluckiest player since Jean de Villiers with injury. Jean de Villiers like made of plastic sometimes. But Luke is out, is even in the mix anymore. Luke de Jager, and then Damien Willemse's injury. Sasha Feinberg-Umzula's injury, which turned out to be much worse. I'm not happy about that. And then the horrific, odd situation in a Curry Cup game against Griquas. Stephen Kitsoff breaks a bone in his neck, and I saw the back of his head. That is, gosh. People are saying his career is over, but I think the jury's out too soon on that. I think Skalkberger came back from a very similar injury, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, Skalkberger's not in the front row, is he? That's my main concern.
That's a fair point, but I mean, when those bones are redone like that, they usually tend to be much stronger than they are naturally. So,
well, I'm talking about the URC just now, about Sasha returning to play this weekend and everything else. But just in terms of the way the Springbok played, the attack and the defense, under Tony Brown and Jerry Flannery. But your impressions there? Did we take a step up with the attack, variability of our attack, different ways, and did our defense did it stay as strong as it used to be?
I would say that the attack at times was incredibly impressive. Sometimes it just didn't quite click. And I think the Argentina game we lost, the attack wasn't quite clicking the way it should have clicked in that game. So I think there's still room to grow with Tony Brown. He seems to know exactly what he's doing and what he can get out of the Bucks. But and to be fair, with all the changes, one week it's this wing, next week it's another wing, the different fullback every time you turn around. I mean, that plays a role in opening that space up and running. So I think that had an impact here. But I would say that the impact of Tony Brown is quite obvious, and the Springbok coaching staff is really a good one. I think that the defense at times almost looked like, oh, here it comes, he's going to get mad. Almost looked like the Bulls' leaky defense, No, come on, be honest. They gave up tries and never should give up this season.
Season.
What's that? No, not the Bulls. Not the Bulls. I'm talking about the Bucks now. No, there's a few games where, I mean, look, the England game shouldn't have been 29-20. It shouldn't have been that close. Shouldn't have been.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, that was some poor defense took place there, and it happened a few other times. But I'll say the defense really stood up at times when it had to, and won a few games. So it was all in all, it was a fantastic season. I can't complain about it.
So one last thing I wanted to ask you about the Springbok. You mentioned that second test where you said we were maybe a bit overconfident in the likes. I think we were underprepared or caught unawares with the fight. We lost the fight, not so much the match, because we broke legs and they really came for us physically. And typically, a Springbok side would be able to stand up to these guys physically. And I thought there was a bit of a problem there. And then obviously, like you said, Sasha, running the ball out and then them getting back in our side and getting the drop goal that won them the match. But that side of it, the physicality, there's a saying that says, if the Springboks are 10 points behind, they're still going to win it, like they did last year against England. You always, this Springbok team, they're going to somehow pull off a trick and win it. That test against Ireland, they have, what did they score? 24 unanswered points, remember? All kicks, coming back, and then they slipped it up right at the end. But the physical side of it, Frankie Moss playing with a broken leg for 2 minutes, Malcolm Marx breaking his leg, all those kinds of things. That physicality to me, the Springboks fell short in that sense, in that specific game. But I think they learned the lesson afterwards, but that game disappointed me a bit in that sense.
Well, I didn't say they were overconfident. I said they were lackadaisical. They took it. They weren't really in the game. And why I say that is, remember after that game, all the talk in Irish media, and even around the world, about how the Irish stood up to the smash mouth Springboks. They took their game to them. And that's kind of a fair assessment, I think, in that game. They really did take it to the Springboks, and all the broken legs are one good example of it. It was a very physical game. But in the past, with the exception of the All Blacks, when the Springboks would play this physical game and they grind it out, they go pick and go, and they just get the front row up there and just drive and crash the line, they would wear teams down, and that's what Springboks are known for. But with Tony Brown there, open up, we've got that, and we've got the wide open game. And in that game, I think a lot of rugby analysts said, "Hey, listen, Ireland can stand toe to toe with the Springboks in the trenches. Look at this. They can win the scrum. They can take these guys head on and smash them." And I think that was a wake up call in some respects, because the Springboks have always prided themselves on being smash mouth and that grinded out rugby, and they were kind of beaten at their own game in that game. Ireland deserved that win. I mean, that hurts. I hate to say that, but it's honest. Ireland deserved that win, and we deserve a wake up call, unfortunately.
One thing I wanted to say about Ireland now was the Springboks after that game. The Springboks kicked on and they got better. They kept playing, and they played the championship. Ireland stopped playing and they had to start playing again with the Autumn Nations. But Ireland doesn't look to be the same team that they were. They didn't the way they ended the season to what they are now. They're creaking a bit, if that's the right word.
Well, this isn't the same Ireland that was going to the World Cup. They've not been the same since they were bounced out once again in a quarterfinal. This team has not been the same. I mean, we saw that in the URC last year at Loftus. We saw, the Irish national side, Leinster coming to town, and the Bulls handled them in that game. That was one of Willie LaRue's best games ever, I think. In that game, it was incredible. But I think that Ireland, something's missing. I don't know what it is. If I did, I won't tell Andy Farrell. But something's missing here. It's not quite right. And I know players have come and gone, but they're just not there right now. I'm not even expecting Ireland to win the Six Nations. I'm saying Scotland or France right now. We'll see, but
sure,
yeah.
Well, talking about Ireland, tomorrow they're taking on or Saturday they're taking on Australia, and that's going to be a bit of a humdinger. I think Sam Prendergast is now getting a run on chance. He's starting the game. Australia disappointed against Scotland. Let's be honest. I expected a much more of a fight from them. And Ireland, like I said, might be a bit on the back foot. I think that's going to be a much closer game than we might expect, especially with Andy Farrell and Joe Schmidt. Those two know each other. They know their tricks. They learned. Andy played under Joe. Joe actually became an Irish citizen, which I never knew when he was Ireland coach. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes there. This is going to be a humdinger of a match, I think.
It really is. And unfortunately for me, I can't cover the game. I might cover the first half of it and just apologize to my audience, because I've got the Sharks and Stormers and I've got to cover that game. So I'll have it on while I'm doing the other game, but that's a big game. I really wanted to watch it for the reasons you just talked about, but also, I talked about the Wallabies. They had those 2 wins. They're on the trot coming up there in the Northern Hemisphere, and people got all excited. I said, okay, calm down. Australian rugby is on the mend. It's not back. It's on the mend. And the next 2 games will prove that. And I predicted in my Super Brew that they would lose to Scotland. I expect it's at Murrayfield. Scotland is looking good, and I expect them to win that game. In fact, Scotland underperformed that game as far as I'm concerned as well. They both underperformed. So it was a bit of a turgid game. But the Wallabies performed much worse than I expected. I expected a little bit more out of them in that game. This game, I expect it's an all-out, grudge match. This is the Wallabies want to have a winning record in the Northern Hemisphere, and they have a chance to count a scalp. Ireland, as I said, is not the same Ireland. There's something missing. There's something wrong. And, getting a game against Portugal is not the same as getting a game against the recovering Wallaby side. So I expect it to be an exciting game. And I usually root for Ireland, but I'm kind of not telling anybody. I'm kind of pulling for the Wallabies in this one, the spirit of Southern Hemisphere solidarity, even though I live in the Northern
So am
Hemisphere.
I.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, there you go. It's out. The secret's out.
If you told me that a year ago I would support an Australia team, I would have laughed in your face, man. But yeah, here we are. It's a year later. I feel completely different. You mentioned the Sharks versus the Stormers. That's a good way to go into the URC. That's the first game. A nice local derby at Durban, at Kings Park, at the Sharks' home ground. Sasha Feinberg and Komazulu back at 10 for the Stormers. That looks to be an exciting game. I'm looking forward to that.
Me as well. I'm very much looking forward to getting back to URC action. I mean, I really enjoyed the fall test, the autumn test. It was incredible. I actually got to cover USA game. I got to cover a Portugal game. Lots of Scotland. I covered all the Scotland games. Covered a couple Wallabies and all the Springbok games. So it was a really enjoyable time. And of course, we came out. The Eagles won all three. U.S. Eagles are back up to 15th in global rankings, and they won all three. They won against Portugal, Spain, and Tonga. They haven't beat Tonga in like 25 years. So that was pretty incredible. And this comes on the heels of a terrible summer session. They were absolutely atrocious this summer. They squandered a game against Romania. They got slaughtered against Scotland. That's to be expected. But they played very poorly, and now they play much better. They played anyway. So I got to see that. Got to see Portugal. Got to see a lot of great games. Really enjoyed it. But the URC, I'm excited that's back. But of course, as soon as we get into it, the next week we take a break for the Champions and Challenge Cup. I mean, look, I like the competitions, but the scheduling is just kind of annoying to say the least.
Atrocious.
Yeah. Yeah. So this game, the Stormers have something to prove because they look like crap. And maybe the break and lots of training will get them back into the mix and they can start performing because they have just been on a slide for over a year. I mean, they got to the playoffs last year, but they weren't a good team in the second half. And it's, I'm going to have to start wearing Bulls jerseys more frequently because I have to hide my eyes in shame.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I suppose your Stormers hoodie is in the wash.
It is in the wash. Funny you should mention that. It's actually hanging on the rack right now, drying.
Sure.
I hang dry it, otherwise it shrinks anyway. But no, so I'm looking forward to that game. The game that I'm really looking forward to is after that, actually, because they need to perform in the Northern Hemisphere to be a true contender, and that's the Bulls. They're iconic, and hopefully that will go well for the Bulls. We'll see how it goes. That Scarlet loss still irritates me.
Did you see the Bulls team?
I have not seen any of the lineups. I got to check them as soon as I finish my broadcast.
Just very quickly, the Bulls front row is going to be the second row. Wilco is not there. Gerrard's on the bench. Johan Grobelaar's on the bench. And then, interesting enough, Willie starting, Kane Moody is playing. And then, interesting enough, Kobus Wiese is playing at number 7. That's an interesting side. So it's sort of a mixture. Gerard Steenkamp on the bench. Some of the Springboks are on the bench. I'm sure some of those guys weren't available for Jake to select. I didn't attend the press conference. I couldn't. I was driving, where I was going. So that I missed. And so I'm looking forward to that one. I think the Bulls will probably beat this Connacht team. Connacht is not the best form, like most of the Irish teams, actually, not in the greatest of forms.
Except for Leinster. That's the exception, obviously. Yeah. No, so I agree. Well, I was in that press conference and I got to ask questions of Devin Williams. I asked him about, we've for years he's been synonymous with the Pumas, and now he's settled in with the Bulls, second season. Is he missing the Pumas, or he's just enjoying his time there? He said he'll always find a special spot there, but he's enjoying his time with the Bulls. And then got to interview Kobus Wiese. He seems very excited about playing with the Bulls, and so we'll see how it goes here. I think it's going to be. We'll see him at 7. I think that's going to be interesting, as you said. So we've got the Connacht and the Bulls. Then after that, it's Munster and the Lions. Now the Lions have to win. Let me explain why. The Lions must win. If we're to take this team seriously, they've had a long break. They've had lots of training time. The guys have all been up there. It's not like they're just going up there now. And they need to win on the road. This is a game, and not just against Zebra Parma. You got to win on the road. And so this is a game they need to win. Munster is struggling. It's a great time to take a scalp. So this is what I expect to see. I expect to see Leinster win today, and Ulster, of course, the game of covering. Then I'm hoping that the Stormers have their act together and win in Durban. I expect the Bulls to win in Connacht, and I expect the Lions to win. I think of the three South Africa games against 3 games that we're talking about here, the one that bears the most chance for a big win could be the Bulls. I think the Bulls could win by a large amount. I think the Lions can win, but they're not going to win by a large amount. And the Stormers can win, but they're going to probably win by 7 points or less. So that's where I sit on those things.
No, I agree with you. The Lions won 4 out of the first 5 games, and I think Munster won 2. And they've now lost their coach, and they've lost their forwards coach. So they must be in a total turmoil. So it's also right for the picking. I think the Lions must win that one. You're absolutely right. I agree with your scores. I'm not sure the Bulls might win by a big score, but I think they might put it off. And the Stormers and the Sharks, shame, man. I think the Stormers have run their course already. I'm sorry to say that, but
I hold out hope that the Sharks are incredibly inconsistent. So one day they're world beaters, the next day they're the team that can't win in the Challenge Cup. So although they did win the Challenge Cup this year, so
yeah.
But we'll see how it goes. But I've got to root for the Stormers. I can't root for the Sharks in this game.
You can't. I don't know. I mean, the second team after the Bulls. I mean, it's just normal.
No, I think you're confused. That's backwards. Don't forget. Look, if it comes down to it, I root for the Griquas over the Bulls. Trust me.
No, man. That's just
yes. Every time. Listen, if you can play rugby on concrete, you deserve my support.
No, absolutely, you're right. Kimberley is a graveyard. You're right. Anyway, listen, Chris, I need to let you go, but thanks for that. I appreciate you making time for me. I explained my schedule problems today, so thank you very much for fitting me in. I really appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure. Look, I think people enjoy our conversations, and we kind of owe it to them to keep it going. I think with December coming, I think you might be easing up on the accelerator a little bit there, and we'll be doing less broadcasting. I don't know if we're going to do another one or not before Christmas, but
we'll discuss things. Okay. I need to just plan a couple of things. I need a break. I'm honestly just sort of burnt out. Really am. So, but thank you. I've got a couple of ideas I want to talk to you about, but we'll take it from there. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Sounds brilliant. Hey, folks, it's early, but why not offer it now? We're past Thanksgiving in America. Merry Christmas to folks around the world who listen to the program. Thanks a lot to MV. It's always a pleasure. Bye-bye, Donkey. Cheers.
This is the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt.